Remember, the art of deep breathing is your secret superpower. It's like a magical elixir that can soothe inner fires of inflammation, melt away stress, spark a bonfire of mental clarity, usher in a sunrise of brighter moods, forge a shield for your immune defenses, and stoke the furnace of your metabolism. So inhale the joy, exhale the woes, and let that smile shine.
Your new video of breathing, which is making waves, perhaps not simply in China, but in the rest of the world. How have you taken to this particular health issues, and especially breathing and yoga?
Okay, so I'll need to dial this back a few years. Back in 2020, I was about 85 kilos. I was pre-diabetic. I was on cholesterol tablets for 15 years. I was pre-hypertension, or already into hypertension with a systolic and diastolic rate of about 160 over 90. I was, borderline obese. I was just feeling not too happy with myself. And this was not because I was not active. I was very active. I was very sporty. I would be running half marathons. But the fact is that it is the abundance of eating, the abundance of, indulgences that was causing me a lot of the problems. And that's when I decided that I needed to make a change. So I was on a trip back from Washington, D.C. to Nairobi. I was posted as the UN resident coordinator in Kenya, when I came across a Wim Hof method of breathing, a Dutch gentleman who went and actually learned from Indian monks in the Himalayas about these breathing techniques. And what he did was, over a period of 4 to 5 years, came up with his own version of it. And that's what I started to practice. But what I also did was started adopting, and this really started in March of 2020, a complete lifestyle change.
Very recent, I must say.
So it's in the last 4 years. Right. So I've just completed 4 years of that. I started this change there, where I started the practice of breath work, which I combined with fasting. So I went on to eating 1 meal a day instead of 3 meals a day. So it was 1 meal a day. After that, I would do about 10 to 15 minutes of high intensity interval training. And today there is enormous scientific research which actually shows that doing high intensity interval training is the equivalent of spending about 2 to 3 hours in a gym. And above all that, I also started making sure that I would be standing like this at my workstation. So as you can see,
we'll come to that.
Yeah. And last point is cold exposure. So I also started exposing myself to extreme cold conditions. Initially, I was very cold, but when I started the breath work, the body becomes like a combustion engine, and it starts to generate its own form of heat. And suddenly in 10-15 minutes, I was quite comfortable despite the cold conditions around me. And it also starts to release what is endorphins and neuroepinephrines and adrenaline into your body. It also releases shots of dopamine. So that suddenly you start overcoming these stresses. Your body goes into what is called hormesis, which is artificial stresses are created. The body creates new human growth hormones in the body. Increasing amount of evidence which is coming out from Harvard University, David Sinclair, Stanford University, the leading neuroscientist called Andrew Huberman, all talking about the values of breath work, fasting, high intensity interval training, and cold exposure. Anxiety attacks, asthma, etc. are finding solutions in the breath. So it's this kind of rediscovering the medicinal properties and the well-being that breath can bring into our lives. And I think that's very important.
That's this particular exercise has made you very immensely popular in China. Mm-hmm. How do you see that? I mean, you see that response. How do you see that response?
Yeah.
You're popular in social media, Chinese media, and of course on the television channels.
I think COVID was a big reminder for us that how fragile human health is. Over the last 3 years, when COVID came, we found health systems and health was very fragile. So if you recall the words of Herophilus, the famous Greek philosopher, who said that when health is absent, art cannot manifest, intellect cannot think, wealth becomes useless, and strength cannot fight. It's multifaceted, and that is why in the UN sustainable goals we have sustainable goal number 3, which is on universal health coverage. I'm convinced that today without health we cannot have economic growth. We've seen how the impact of COVID has had a financial impact which rivals the Great Depression of the 1930s. So I believe health is an individual responsibility as much as it's a state responsibility. But once individuals take responsibility for their health, they can start to transform their lives. And for example, in the last 4 years, I've not had COVID and nor have I had a flu. I've seen a dramatic change in my state of well-being compared to pre-2020, when I would have a flu every year and be sick for about 2 weeks.
I think let's talk about that. See, you had polio in your childhood.
At 3 years of age, I had polio. And I still recall that when I would be taken to a hospital, they used to put electric shocks in my leg to kind of waken it up. It was hard. So if I can still remember that memory of a 3-year-old. Normally as a 3-year-old, you tend to forget, what's happened in your life. But I still have that memory vividly in me. But growing up was hard. And the education system, the environment, everything was harsh. Then I went into boarding school at an early age. Again, boarding schools were tough. So it was constantly...
So you recovered completely from polio?
I recovered completely from polio, yeah.
So
No, I was very lucky, because countless others have been handicapped or died as a consequence of it.
You went on to join the...
Right, that, I was not doing well in school. In fact, I got 43% in my 10th class board exams. And, my parents and my teachers thought, I should look at vocational skills as a future in this. And there's nothing wrong with vocational skills. And that's when I took resolve to it that I had to, make myself independent. So I got into the National Defense Academy, not in my first attempt, but in my second attempt. But that was my Forrest Gump moment, if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump. It was really transformative for me. And
what was the year?
It was 1981. And it was a dramatic change, like dramatic. So when I say dramatic, I became a polo player. I became a boxer. I got the Best Boxers Award. I became a merit card recognition in boxing. Many things started to change till I came to the end of my term, which was I got my bachelor's degree.
Of course, you're part of the para regiment, one of the most extremely difficult.
Yeah, so I got into graduated from the NDA, went to the Indian Military Academy, and that's when I decided that I wanted to join the parachute regiment. My journey to success to two institutions. One is the National Defense Academy, and one is the unit I served in. That really shaped the way that I look at things.
It's also unique that you served both in Indian peacekeeping force in Sri Lanka.
That's right.
And then later in India's operations in the Northeast.
That's right. That's right.
And from then onwards, when you just talk us through your UN journey, how you entered, progressed, came this far.
Yeah. So what happened was that, I was decorated for gallantry in 1995. And that's when I felt what I would call a subconscious disquiet. I genuinely believe that this form of use of kinetic energy to overcome problems was not necessarily the way to go. I felt that the primacy of politics is much more important. And that's when I said, it's time for me to move on. So when I decided to move on, my first job was actually, again, at a very humble job in Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1997, in January of 1997. And again, from there, I basically started from the bottom and then worked myself around, and fortunately got into Princeton University to do a master's degree there, and things started to happen. And I've seen where humanity serves humanity at its best is when we come together in solidarity and compassion. And somehow, when I look at the world around me today, that aspect of solidarity and compassion is lacking. And I think that is why the UN Secretary General is driving and pushing and wanting to resurrect the UN to be that beacon of hope for people who are vulnerable, for people who are despondent, for people who are in need. And we need to look at a way to make the United Nations fit for purpose in that context, which is what I'm doing with the United Nations country team here in China, to make ourselves fit for purpose. And that's why I'm strongly advocating for health in China. Why? Because large number of people are being affected by diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular problems. As the UN, we have to become that role model of wanting to work with the government to engage with that change.
Abdominal churning, provides a vigorous massage to the organs in the abdomen, stomach, intestine, liver, spleen, and the pancreas. It stimulates the digestive fire. It eliminates constipation, considerably accelerates gaseous exchanges because of the retention on empty lungs, stimulates the heart and the blood circulation, and stimulates brain irrigation. The headstand, also called the king of all yoga asanas. It calms the mind, alleviates stress and depression, activates the pituitary and the pineal glands, stimulates the lymphatic system, strengthens the upper body, the spine and the core, enhances lung capacity, stimulates and strengthens the abdominal organs, and boosts digestion.